is Kenneth Branagh, and I'm the writer and director of what you're now watching, which is Belfast. This young man's Buddy, the central character in our film. At this stage, an 8-year-old boy. He'll soon be 9, and he'll be 10 by the time the story ends. And this very much recreates a moment in my childhood on that very same day, when from this impression that I have very much held across 50 years of being aware of a certain sense of security that I felt back there, knowing people like Mr. West, who waves to Buddy there. Exactly what happened when this security, when this sunshine, when this peace was all affected by a single incident that we start to convey now. And we do so as Buddy watches on a piece of circular track which goes around him twice as he hears what I heard, which was a sound like a sort of swarm of bees, but it turned out not to be that. It was the slow motion, surreal quality in my ears, as it seemed, and certainly as it seems from 50 years, that produced this incredible image. More men, more sound, more violence, more waving, more weapons, more masked folk than I had ever come across. And before I knew what had happened, the storm, as it were, began. And so, adrift in the middle of the road, like many of the other people who were then trying to make it into their houses, we really didn't know what to do. But what we were seeing was a mob that was proceeding with this kind of hectic, frantic, chaotic, aggressive, anarchic energy, going up and down the street and marking with, sometimes with stones, the kinds of ones that are hitting this shield now reused by Ma as she protects Buddy, and sometimes through picking up ironware from the edge of the street. They found weapons to mark the windows of the Catholic houses that shared the street with what was predominantly a Protestant population. And these street grates were incredible ironware things. Once broken up, they became lethal. And aside from those and makeshift weapons like the baseball bat, there was basically this marking of the houses so that no one could be in any dispute about the fact of those houses now being filled with a population that, according to this crowd, were unwelcome. And they make their message, and did make their message, very, very clear.
What are you talking about?
The black and white photography here, I think, is worth talking about, perhaps. The quality it has, which is, I think, often with period stories, to imbue it with a sense of grittiness, reality, authenticity, if you like, is at odds with the fact that that's not, in fact, how we see the world, is it? We don't watch the world in black and white. But if you look at the photography of Cartier-Bresson, or if you look at a film like Ida by Pawlikowski, you'll see that black and white in period stories can be tremendously gripping in the way it takes us into a sort of poetic dimension.
Father Christmas?
This was a shot that we did many times in one take, and it was part of the raw performance qualities that Jamie Dornan and Caitríona Balfe gave to these two parts, Ma and Pa. We rarely rehearsed things. We would talk about things, but then because of COVID and because of limited child shooting hours, we would often just shoot immediately without a rehearsal, hoping to capture some of the rawness and passion that you will now see across this particular scene. And Jamie and Caitríona, I think, were very impressive. The way they also set an example for young Jude, watching with great presence here, to this kind of commitment you need in this kind of picture to this sort of reality, trying to find a fire in these relationships which was not too much rehearsed, was not too set. At all times with this story, we were trying to find the natural and the throwaway, people not conscious of being in a scene in a film, but instead just trying to be as naturalistic as they possibly could. Although we shot quickly, and sometimes we often shot in long takes, so this is an example of them, people would say, oh, were you rushed? Did you feel as though you didn't have enough time? This particular shot, we did 25 takes of. It has 4 moving pieces, if you like, in the actors. Getting in this door was a question of, well, who masks who or doesn't mark who? Do we get all the lines on camera, if that's what we'd like? Does the timing work? Is everybody believable? Did the pan on the camera work? All of those things we took the time to get right. The actors were very patient, and we were not limited by having a short shoot to get the acting right, even when we committed to single takes. When 2 people like this at the top of their game play a simple scene like this with such beauty and truth and depth, as a director, it's a very beautiful thing to be part of. It's the kind of thing where you really have nothing to say. You just let them do it again and again, and you know when they're finished. And you let them sometimes contribute. This last little moment when Judy Dench says, "Do you hear me?" And Ciarán Hinds leans in and says, "When did I not?" Which is a line of his own. He asked me if he could put that in at the end, and of course I said yes. It's a very Belfast line, and he does it beautifully. And the actors, I think, often owned a percentage of the text around that which was written, because their understanding of the milieu was great. In this moment where the power of the theatre made itself felt to Buddy for the first time, Una Donnelly and Matt Glenn, our editor and our visual effects supervisor, came up with the idea of a coloured reflection in Gran's glasses of the theatrical scene. You'll have noticed that in the moments where Buddy is exposed to these great creative flashes of the theatre, of the cinema with the Raquel Welch film, and later on you're going to see another example of colour, it felt like an instinct to celebrate what that medium, what the movie medium was doing to Buddy's imagination. It certainly did it to mine. It made a sort of psychedelically powerful impact from the big screen, and the storytelling in black and white movies made an incredible impression from the smaller screen. The first part of this scene is improvised. We felt that what was about to happen was a very big acting challenge for young Jude Hill, so we set up the idea of him firing that ray gun and being full of energy, and then Caitríona Balfe and Jamie Dornan sitting him down and improvising a scene ahead of the scene that I had written, so that, as you can see Jude so beautifully doing, there is a chance for him to warm up into the idea of the upset that would be the bones of this scene, which really starts from a dialogue point of view here. When you have a 10-year-old leading actor, the idea of doing a scene like this, which is very exposed and very distressing and upsetting, where you want him to feel it very strongly, and yet I don't want to upset young Jude Hill's life at 10 years of age. I don't want him to be traumatized by it. So setting up the atmosphere of trust in which you can allow this young actor to do his best was a combination of providing the situation I've just explained, but also ahead of the scene, weeks ahead of the scene, letting him understand a little of how you might do it, so that you prepared him for the ask of it, not to burden him, but also to treat him as a real professional, getting ready, as I knew he would, for what would be a scene that he does splendidly with. When we recorded Jamie Dornan, who was once in a band of his own, singing along with this, we rehearsed him without him hearing the track in his ears, and he was bang on pitch. So he has a very excellent musicality and a great sort of husky quality to his voice, which is very pertinent for the lead singer of this particular band. And the shenanigans going on in the background with all these people dancing is very much what I remember from such events. You were surrounded by pickled eggs and sometimes pickled people.